EatRawMeat has been eating raw meat for 6 years now. Not only that, he's been eating the raw Primal diet by Aajonus Wonderplanets, a diet that people rarely switch from. They go on it and they never go back. In the 6 years that he's eaten this way, he's amassed a wealth of knowledge. And in this conversation, he talks about food sourcing, nutrition in general, what has helped him, detoxification, good health practices, and so on and so forth. I hope you learn a lot from this conversation. Thank you. You've been on the Primal diet for a few years now, if I'm not mistaken. Could you talk to me about how you got into it in general and what are the things you've experienced? How has it helped you?
Well, I started the Primal diet in January of 2018, and I started about like 50% raw foods and still eating cooked foods. Of course, I stopped eating a lot of processed foods and things and junk foods. So this January, it'll be 6 years on the diet. And I started because I have always been looking for, something in terms of health. I've struggled with, I've talked about it before, eczema and, asthma, different things of that nature. Even things like, depression, which growing up, I never thought, like, how could somebody be depressed? And eventually, as I got older and I think exposed to more pharmaceuticals, let's say, that it kind of just got worse. And then I just kind of realized, like, oh, I'm depressed. So, you kind of get used to that after a while, I think, for some people. But, I think everybody, well, I guess not everybody, but I think some people at least want to do something to improve themselves and feel better. So I started going down, I guess you call it the YouTube rabbit hole back in 2017, 2018, back when it was less censored. And, there's Frank Tufano, he talked about Aajonus, and Sverige, he talked about Aajonus. And those are some channels I watch. Not that I necessarily follow or think Sverige is a great guy, but that was like my first exposure to it. And even on some message boards, I would see people talk about raw meat. And, I don't remember if I saw Aajonus's name there, but definitely people were talking about, eating raw meat and why it's good. And Weston A. Price, is another one in his observations on different cultures and different modes of eating and ways of living. So that was all very interesting to me. And as far as changes, when I first started the diet, I didn't really do a lot of detoxing. I probably was 100% raw 3 to 4 months into 2018. And I was doing mostly like eggs and meat and some honey. Sparingly, I would use vegetable juice because I would garden. So it was mostly just like cucumbers, cucumber juice and puree out of my garden, and sometimes celery. Mostly just in the summer, though, and a little bit of fruit. I noticed that I had a big increase in energy and just well-being, especially when I started doing the high meat. Probably when I was around that same time, I had started some liver. I was pretty gung-ho about it, and I never experienced a lot of detox from doing the high liver. I've tried other meats, but they're just not palatable. So I really just eat the high liver, and eventually I was eating like a whole jar. I'd eat like a whole half a pound, 3/4 of a pound at a time. Um, and I really enjoyed it. It made me feel better. Felt like my digestion was getting a little bit better. I noticed in 2020 is when I started to get raw milk. That's when I found dairy, and that was pretty difficult at first. There was a lot of diarrhea, which is pretty common for a lot of people. And then eventually, after 2 weeks, it went away, and it was really good. And then I started detoxing because I was able to gain weight. So for the first 2 years, it was more just like my body was fueling itself and maybe rebuilding. So to put it in simple terms, like the body can do three things, which is detox, rebuild, and fuel. And you can't do all three of those things 100% all the time. So your body is going to go through phases where you'll be detoxing more than, you know, rebuilding yourself. You're always going to be fueling your body, but between those two, there's going to be a balance. So when I started to put on weight with the raw dairy, I that's when I started to get detoxes, and some of them were pretty rough because I didn't have enough weight on me. But my body just kind of wanted to get it out. I guess you can't always control or tell, when that's going to happen. So it's always good to have some extra foods on hand, like cheese and honey and some dairy, some butter, just in case. And I guess this past year, I really noticed that there are just some times where I'm just like, man, I feel great, and I just kind of relish that moment. Um, and then it's like I'll detox next week and I want to die. But yeah, that's basically it. It's a big spectrum there. I've gone through an adrenaline detox with insomnia. At the same time, I got tinnitus from a work accident, and that was probably the hardest 8 months of my life because I couldn't sleep, and I was laying in bed and it just was like constant ringing even throughout the day. And that's one thing that I've tried to find, a lot of relief from, which I guess I don't want to say it hasn't come from anywhere. I don't want to say it's gotten worse. I don't want to be pessimistic for people who have tinnitus because I know how hard it is, but like it's just a very hard area to heal because of the lack of circulation in that part of the body, and I'm not really sure like what exactly is causing it. Um, so like in terms of like what to eat, it's difficult. I've definitely gotten some relief, just from eating a lot of the raw fat to calm my nerves, and getting enough sleep helps. When you're not getting sleep, it's kind of a vicious cycle. Um, but yeah, the adrenaline that it took about 8 months, and then finally I realized I was sleeping for 6 hours straight through, and I was like, "Wow, that's awesome!" Finally. And then meningitis. I've had meningitis a couple times, or like meningitis like uh, detox, where my head was just pounding every step I take. My head was pounding. You'd lay down, it feels like you got hit in the head. You get up, it feels like you got hit in the head. Um, I've had some vomiting, but not a lot. Um, but it's yeah, like I said, it's a spectrum and it's tough. A lot of people, this diet really isn't for everybody. Especially like you'll find that, as you get healthier and you might talk to people about it close to you or friends, or even just strangers on the internet, like some people don't really want to be healthy because it maybe takes shifting of a worldview that they don't want to change, commitment and discipline. It's uncomfortable sometimes. So that's the past 6 years in a nutshell. Sometimes I feel really great, and when you detox, you don't feel so great. And hopefully, like as I keep going, it just gets a little better overall.
Yeah, I see. So what are you eating currently? How has your diet changed? And so what do you eat now, basically? How's your diet like?
So it's interesting, in the book, We Want to Live, Aajonus talks about your blood type and how that changes on the diet. And while I've never gotten a blood test analysis to figure out, how my type has changed, I first started eating out beef like a lot of people because that's, I guess, the psychological barrier for beef is pretty low. I was still kind of freaked out when I ate pork and chicken, but obviously nothing happened, and I grew to really like those meats. Um, After about 2.5, 3 years, I couldn't eat red meat anymore. I was like, no, I just can't do it. So I switched to pork and fish for about a year and a half. And then just recently, I started eating beef because I think I was getting a little anemic, honestly, because I would like yawn, which I kind of feel like I'm about to do now. But I'd be like speaking or talking, and then I would just have this urge to yawn, even though I wasn't tired. And just reading through the book again, like I read the books at least once a year. I came across anemia, and I was like, oh, maybe I need some more red meat to offset that. So I enjoy beef again. It's been great. I've been eating. I wake up, I eat cheese if I can remember, and I have enough cheese. I do cheese pulling, which is where you just mush up a bunch of cheese and let it sit in your mouth for about 10 minutes, and you spit it out. You don't eat that. And then I'll eat my eggs. In the summer, I've mostly been doing hydration formulas. I found that they are for me, a suitable replacement for where I'm at for vegetable juice. Which is it can be pretty important, especially for some people. And I do about sometimes I make it like the recipe says, and sometimes I'll do like a cup of each base of cucumber, tomato, watermelon, and I'll skip the apple cider vinegar. I'll add in eggs and cream, a little bit of lime juice and lemon, and I'll drink that throughout the day. And that has been suitable for me for alkalizing my body. And I have an appetite for meat, so I sip that during the day. I eat a lot of eggs during the day. I used to drink a lot of milk. Now I drink maybe 4 cups, maybe sometimes 3 or 2, and usually it's fermented or sour, because half my milk I get from the week, it's all refrigerated. So I pick up my milk, it hasn't been chilled at all, and I just let half of it sit on the counter, a gallon, and I'll drink that for like 4 days, and then I'll dip into some fridge milk, and then I'll make a milkshake after my meat meal, probably like 2 hours after my meat meal. Uh, Lately, I've been doing berries with apple cider vinegar, tablespoon apple cider vinegar, 2-ish tablespoons of lime juice, 1 teaspoon of lemon juice, and then a little bit of coconut cream if I have it. But that specifically in the milkshake is an extra boost for detoxing metals with the berries. The apple cider vinegar works with the berries, especially to remove uh, some of those things we can't really say or talk about. So that's been pretty nice. You might think it tastes weird, but it's actually kind of a very pleasant, refreshing taste. When you think like citrus and milk, eh, but I was pretty surprised. So generally, that's what I'm eating. Of course, cheese throughout the day, raw and salted cheese throughout the day. And I keep it pretty simple: beef and tomatoes for dinner with bone marrow or butter. Get these little cherry tomatoes. So I've been working at a farm stand at a farmer's market. So I've been getting like free organic produce all year long and getting paid. I haven't had to really go to the store to buy any produce. It's been awesome. So that's what I'm doing now.
Interesting. Now, for those who don't know, you went on an interview where they did an entire video on you and your diet.
Mm-hmm.
It was on the I Wonder YouTube channel. And in that video, you hadn't, gained a lot of weight. You were, slimmer back then. Now you've gained a lot of weight. So tell me about the benefits of gaining weight, and do you have any tips? Because I'm eating, sort of a hybrid of the primal diet, but still I have trouble gaining weight to some degree.
Yeah, I understand. That was filmed. I want to say, yeah, it was November of 2020, and that was, yeah, I was still pretty skinny. I probably put on about maybe 5 or 10 pounds, because I want to say I was like 160-ish there. And when I started, I was 145, 150-ish is what I was around. And now I'm like 188, 190. I just came off a detox. I lost about 12 pounds in a week. So I'm still gaining back from that. But for me, I think it was my liver and its inability to properly digest and assimilate the fats. because when I started out, I had a real craving for liver. I would eat 3 to 5 pounds of liver a week sometimes, and eventually I just got sick of it. Probably at the end of 2021, middle of 2021, I stopped eating liver, even high meat, even the high liver I had. But I think in losing an appetite for it, my body kind of it didn't need so much, right? Like, and then I noticed I started gaining the weight, and I was able to digest the fat better, I think. So, um, a high fat diet is essential. You know, a lot of people say the lubrication formulas are good. Aajonus has said the milkshakes are best for gaining weight. And I would agree. That's mostly what I drank. I don't really make lube formulas. Is the cream and the honey? You know, that's really a powerhouse of packing on the pounds, pretty much. And of course, there's the suppositories too, where you use a combination of cream, butter, coconut cream, and a little bit of honey, and you it's a suppository insert rectally, and then you do some movements to snake it through your colon, and then you go to bed. And I did those once a week for about 3 months, 4 months. And I think that definitely helped speed up some of the weight gain as well. It also helped calm my nerves. I was also doing it for my tinnitus because of where that is in the body. It's in the neurological system, the audiological system somewhere. So in your colon, that bacteria is really what feeds the nervous system. So I was really kind of like after that. And I noticed my tinnitus would be quieter the day after that I would do those. And I think the last one I did was probably 2 months ago, maybe. And I don't really feel the need to do them anymore. So, you know, some people do, it can be very helpful, but, you know, I found that as time went on, I needed it less. So it's kind of a pain to do. So, and you can use eggs as well. You don't have to use coconut cream. You know, that's just kind of recommended. But um, yeah, definitely the milkshakes and eating a pound of meat a day is a good thing. Eating mm, at least a dozen eggs. I was probably doing 18 eggs a day between, you know, all my foods. Like the milkshakes, I would count that as eggs. I'd put like 4 to 6 eggs in a milkshake, and you know, I'd eat eggs throughout the day. And if you need that, if you need the extra appetite, doing the vegetable juice is helpful, especially if you add in corn or beet, sweet corn or beet. So like 10% of your vegetable juice, make it beets or corn, because those produce more hydrochloric acid. So that will um, up your appetite a little bit.
Interesting, very interesting. Do you have a tutorial for how to do the suppositories? Because I'm interested in that, but I have never done it. So what's your method?
Yeah, I've got a video on it. It doesn't show me doing it,
Obviously.
because that's kind of hard to it'd be kind of hard to film, but it's, excuse me, it's pretty well described in like the Q&As. um you know, if you go to primaldiet.net, you can look that up there. Basically, um you know, once you've got it in, you roll your belly up. You do belly rolls so it's coming up into your chest cavity, you know, like you're waving your belly. It's hard to describe. You do belly rolls, and you want to keep your head down so your torso is, you know, you're using that gravity, that momentum. And then you lift up your, I think it's your right leg first, and you hold it there for at least a minute. And then you would lift up your left leg, because if you look at the body, the way the colon works, it comes up, then it comes over, then it comes up, then it comes over, it comes down. It's like a little box. So it's basically just figuring out, you know, the geometry of that is, you know, how you're supposed to move it through your body. And then after you kind of go back and forth a little bit, um, you would, I like to, at least it's called, I think it's called plow pose. It's a yoga pose. I don't like to do it exactly. I put my legs up on like a wall or a bed or something, so my body's just like straight up, and it's just gravity's just, well, it's not gravity, but anyway, it's just coming down, and then you move it around some more. Um, that's pretty much it. I'm doing a real bad job describing it, but it's just a series of moving your bodies so you snake the liquid through your colon, so it gets deep enough that you're not waking up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, I see what you
So
mean. Now, I wanted to ask you about general health practices. So what I mean is, now we've talked about diet. So what do you do that isn't related to diet but is related to health? So do you avoid EMF? Do you do the baths and so on and so forth?
yeah, so I do the baths. I do a hot bath once a week for 2 hours. Um, I'd like to do it more, but it's just a little time consuming. Um, so I get in at 110 degrees, then it gets 102, and I heat the tub back up. So that's health and wellness part of the diet, yes, but it's not like diet. Although you could argue, anything you put on your skin goes into your body, so you're feeding your skin with like the milk in a way. So I put in, Aajonus has his recommendations for the tub. I've increased them because, unfortunately, the world did not stop turning when Aajonus died, and the world is getting more toxic. So I think it's wise to use a quart of raw milk, almost or between quarter and half of a cup of apple cider vinegar, and then I use 2/3 of a cup of dead sea salt. It can be any sun-dried sea salt or Epsom salt, but 2/3 of a cup of salt is the maximum you want to use. So yeah, I stay in there for 2 hours. I get in at 110 and it goes down. I heat it back up. It helps to heat up the tub first. I turn my hot water heater up. Water comes out at like 150. Then the room gets nice and hot. That makes a big difference. The hot baths aren't as good in the winters where I'm at, because the ambient room temperature is just colder. But that really helps. And I try to sweat. Sometimes if I'm not feeling well, I'll get in a sleeping bag with some hot water bottles, and I'll just sweat like that if I don't feel like running a bath. I tape my mouth shut. Excuse me. When I sleep, most of the time, because the glue on the tape, I use paper tape. It's not, obviously it's kind of toxic, but in my mind, better to not mouth breathe, to worry about something I can wash off in the morning. Um, but it makes a big difference in my sleep. I noticed. Um, I know I saw your video and you put me onto the Mantor Restore, which I haven't bought yet because I don't have enough slack to do so. But I do practice some tugging to do foreskin restoration, to cover the glands. Because I was like so many men, robbed of a body part without my consent. So that's it's kind of therapeutic knowing you can like work towards things. So that's nice. But yeah, I'm just trying to work up enough slack so I can use the Mantor device for more effective restoration. Um, I go on walks. I don't exercise. I used to compete. I did Kyokushin karate, and I would go to tournaments and stuff and fight. And that's something recently I've had an interest maybe in getting back into. I'd like to get another job so I could have a more concrete schedule, a new job, I should say, because right now I work a couple different jobs, and it would be nice to have a set schedule so I don't really have to make changes and miss trainings, especially when you're training for a competition. You want to be in shape and ready to go for that. But that used to be something I used to crave, as exercise, and as I've done the diet, that has really kind of fallen off. Like I used to really I'd ride my bike downtown to go to the gym, and then I'd work out for about 2 hours. I'd ride my bike back. So it was something I really enjoyed and look forward to. But now I'm like, I don't want to say I'm lazy, but I don't really have a compulsion to, do 300 push-ups a day and 100 squats and ride my bike for a couple hours and, you know, practice my techniques. I should be doing more stretching, but you know, it is what it is. But that's basically what I do for my health. I just try to focus on sleeping right, avoiding avoiding anything like toxic. I mean, I still wash my dishes with tap water, so it gets on my hands, but it's not like I don't shower in tap water. Um, I don't use detergents or like soaps. And hmm, as far as EMF goes, I live in the city. It's kind of everywhere. I'm on Wi-Fi right now, so I don't like to put my phone in my pocket. Sometimes I will if it's not for too long, because I think it takes like 3 minutes for damage to start occurring. And I try to hold it in my hand, or I put it in my coat pocket, somewhere, which it's still in your body, but at least it's not next to my bits. So I some people are a little more retentive about it, like they have the EMF pillows and stuff, and I don't have that. Another thing is I want to purchase a thing of barefoot shoes. I'm usually barefoot unless I'm like working or something. I need boots for that. But I'd like to get into barefoot shoes. I think that's a great thing. And gosh, I was going to talk about EMF or something else.
Sunlight, earthing, anything like that?
Yeah. So obviously in the summer, yeah, I try to get at least a half hour of sunlight in. I go lay on the grass. I just got a towel out and lay out, get some sun. Excuse me. Yeah, that's there's probably something. Oh, for teeth. So I do, like I said, the cheese pulling, and then if I'm good about it, I'll do oil pulling at night with coconut oil. And you can use cold pressed organic coconut oil, which actually gets heated during the pressing process, but it's not good to eat. But for oil pulling, it's still good. I've heard Aajonus say that, so that helps. And I use a Sonicare toothbrush because it has the sonic waves, the vibrations are very useful in getting rid of the plaque, keeping plaque off of your teeth. I was, brushing twice a day and flossing, and I found I was still getting some wear in my teeth because I'm very contaminated. I've had 50, what's those things I can't say. So I've had 50 of those throughout my life, and I've got a significant amount of metals dumping in my body, especially coming through my mouth. I don't have any decay per se. I saw a dentist a few years ago, and he mentioned that he sees it in a lot of people who've had braces because they have those brackets, and plaque will accumulate there no matter what, no matter how much you brush, and it will wear down the enamel. I also think it's from going to the dentist regularly growing up because they have that metal hook thing and they scrape your teeth. So imagine like they're just scraping away, minuscule amounts of your enamel. So the mouth, the salivary glands, the teeth, the gums, the tongue, they're all detox pathways for the brain, and a lot of metals can come out that way. So, like I said, I've got some wear on the enamel. So the enamel is small portions, like a millimeter or so by the gum line, is gone now, and I've got dentin there. It's just the bare tooth. There was some sensitivity, but it went away when I increased fish and cheese and honey in my diet. So the dentist said, he's like, it's not really a problem. I can fill it if you want to, but it's not going to come back. It's whatever. He's like, but I see it in people who, obviously people who aren't on the diet. But people who have had braces and going to the dentist and getting your teeth scraped is not good. If you go to the dentist, the best thing you can have them do, the only thing you should have them do really is use the water scaler, which is just using, again, it's vibrations and water to clean the teeth. It's not actually like scraping your teeth. So that's a much better alternative than getting your teeth scraped. Don't let them scrape your teeth because they're just scraping away bits of your enamel. But I had to, I was looking for a new toothbrush solution because, you know, brushing twice a day, keeping the plaque off, and flossing, it wasn't doing it. I noticed like my tooth was chipping away. I was getting some wear. So I switched to a Sonicare toothbrush, and I haven't really had that problem. A little bit recently, but that's because I went through a detox, pretty heavy detox, and my cheese got lost in the mail, so I didn't have cheese for a week, which I think would have been helpful. So yeah, I mean, just for my situation, it's all I can do pretty much is just keep the plaque away and try to keep my mouth clean. And if I can remember to rinse with cream or milk after I'm done eating, that's also helpful. So that's pretty much what I do in terms of health. Anytime you can avoid something like, well, for work I do painting, so I have a 3M respirator, and I've got that on my YouTube. OGAV protection, so it's pretty slick. I don't smell anything uh, through that mask. It could be something you take on an airplane if you wanted to get rid of the benzene, because they put the benzene in the air filters. So it's a useful thing to have, if you're going to be around chemicals or gases you don't want to breathe or inhale. You just have that in your car. You might look a little silly like wearing that sometimes, but heck, I don't care.
Honestly speaking, send me the link because that thing would solve many problems for me. How much does it cost?
Yeah. So it's like $70, but I actually kind of saved some money because I bought the respirator with just the particle protection, which is little square filters, and then I bought the OGAV filters separate. So it was like $10 less when I did it that way. I don't know why, but yeah, you can get different grades of filters for different things. But yeah, I'll shoot you the link.
Wonderful.
It's nice to have.
Wonderful. Yeah, that would solve many problems. Now, here's the thing. Anyone who is on this kind of diet has to get good at sourcing food. And obviously, you've been on the diet for 6 years now. So almost. So the thing is, do you have any general food sourcing tips? Because I get a lot of questions about how to find raw milk, how to find good meat, and this and that.
Yeah, so I'm fortunate enough to live somewhere where there's Amish. So even like if I couldn't find a herd share, there's a couple raw dairies around me, and at least one farmer, my farmer, he's not a dairy, but he's just a farmer. I've got a herd share with. Having the Amish you can talk to is beneficial. It can be kind of I don't want to say, it can be a little difficult to break through the first time because you're an outsider, honestly. But if you're, earnest and honest about what you want, and maybe you do some business with them on something else, like buying something else from them that they can't necessarily get in trouble for, and they learn to trust you, that's a good way. The farmers markets are a great source of everything. Like I said, I work at that, and I haven't had to really pay for produce at all, and it's all unsprayed basically. So the berries, the melons, the cucumbers, the tomatoes, everything, has been great. And my boss, the lady, she's like, "Oh, I know some Amish people, and they're coming by Monday, and I can get you some butter." Um, so like, yeah, farmers know other farmers. So like my produce person, like the person I work for, is all produce and fruit, and they just happen to know these Amish people, and they can get me dairy if I want it. There's a guy, not that I eat farmed fish, but he farms fish, and there's a guy next to her stand, and he's got duck eggs. So you go to the farmers market, you get to know these farmers, you ask around, make connections. There's it's pretty easy to find a lot of the foods you need. There's some meat people, and they have good quality meat. Unfortunately, it's all frozen because for small producers, they will either they'll butcher all their chickens, they'll send all their chickens to a slaughterhouse, USDA approved, obviously, unfortunately, one time a year or two times a year, and they get their chicken, they freeze it, because they don't do the business to sell the fresh chicken, obviously. With cows, it's kind of the same story. Cows a lot of meat, so they have to freeze it. I found a butcher that's local. They raise their own cattle and hogs, and they don't medicate it with anything. So that's pretty nice because it's state inspected too, which means it doesn't go through the USDA. The meat is washed with, water and vinegar. So there's no toxic chemicals on the meat that you would find from a USDA processed product. And that's just because it's sold in state. So finding a local producer is really key. Craigslist is a great place for finding, stuff. I go to Farm and Garden for sale, and then you can find pretty much, people got animals, people sell, meat. You might get lucky and find someone who processes their own meat and they're just selling it, one off. Eggs is really good to find, and laying hens. People give away roosters for free because obviously too many roosters can upset the flock and they don't lay eggs. They just become expensive and burdensome. So people get rid of those. That's free meat. I've done that 2 or 3 times. I've been lucky to find. One time I found turkeys for $15 each. And it was like 7 turkeys, and I went out 2 weeks in a row, and I was eating good for like a month and a half. So, it takes some work, but if you put in the work, the food's there. It's also location dependent. Sometimes maybe your city is not going to be a good place, but it's more than likely your city has a farmer's market. So, start there and get to know the farmer and see if they can help you. Obviously, there's some places which are just dead zones where you can't. Like Canada is really bad for the primal diet. We had a friend of a friend, and they're in Canada, and it's like you can't get dairy. The meat sometimes is okay, but there's no dairy. Um, it's hard to find some of these things. So, and they don't have the network of farms like we do in the U.S. where you can order, dairy like cream or butter. So that's tough.
Yeah, so the main thing is get to know a bunch of farmers. And then when you're within that network, it will be easier. And then also search on the internet in these places where people generally sell services, and you might find
Yeah,
things.
yeah. It's some farmers, they don't really have an online presence. Um, some of them don't have a website, but a lot of them will have a Facebook or an Instagram. So, but really, yeah, the best way to get to know them is to just go to your local farmers market or drive over to the next town where the farmers market is and, see what's up there. Because all those farmers come in, I got farmers coming in 2 hours away into my city. So just because you think, oh, I don't live in that city, I'm not going to find farmers. It's you might be surprised. They might be right next to you. They just all congregate to one place. So, um, yeah. And then obviously the best thing you can do is, obviously getting some land or having your own animals, because then you quality control there. Sometimes you have to take people's word for how they raise their animals or how they process them, but it's it is what it is. It's this way of eating has become very difficult because of red tape and regulations, also because of the demand and the monocropping, the agricultural behemoths. So it is what it is. You kind of have to navigate with what we have. But that's really, the best advice I can give is to get to know the farmers, because they'll know, and then check Craigslist. You can make connections there too. I mean, so
Do you have any tips for, choosing and sourcing fish? Because I almost never touch anything from the sea.
oh yeah, I love fish. Um, Deep sea, cold water, ocean fish are your best bet. So I'm going to give you a list here. Make sure you got your pen and paper ready. Orange roughy, swordfish, pollock, perch.
Yeah, I can't write
Uh,
that down. Just I'll rewatch it later.
I was just being facetious.
Okay.
And I've got a video on it too. So orange roughy, pollock, cod, perch, ocean perch, swordfish, tuna, haddock, mackerel is kind of like a medium deep fish. It's pretty oily. It's got a really good fat content. I tried it once. Pretty good. Um, I gotta say the best fish I had recently was some Icelandic cod. It was so fresh and clean. It was delicious. I got a lot of my cod off the northeast coast, but this was even better. Um, And if you look on like a map, I saw a map recently. Someone on YouTube was talking about ocean pollution and the plastics and stuff. And I think where the plastics are kind of relates to where pollution overall in general is. So like I noticed Icelandic cod was really clean. And you look up at like Iceland around there, there's like very little pollution. So if you can get fish from like there, like that's obviously that's great. But yeah, pollock was another one that that I really enjoyed. It was very clean, very tasty. Um, Obviously, like, it's hard. Fish is very geographic dependent. I buy from a retail that's part of a wholesale. So they wholesale fish, they get in a lot of it fresh. Some of them get in frozen and they sell it to the retail, and I go to the retail. So, like, the cod is usually fresh. So I get mostly cod. The perch sometimes comes in fresh. They get scallops fresh, usually oysters come in fresh. Um, some of the stuff gets flash frozen, like the swordfish, the tuna, but the cold water fish, they're adapted. Their cells are adapted to being in the cold. So when they are frozen, there's very minimal loss of nutrition and any possible exposure to toxins. Because when you freeze something, it fractionates the nutrients and the structured water, like especially when it's not vacuum sealed. I think when something's frozen and it's vacuum sealed, it's a little better because it will keep the meat intact. But like if you just put some meat in a bag or just in a bowl and you put it in the freezer, you'll see it gets that crust, that water on it. And that's because the water in the meat is exploding. Basically, it's getting drawn out of the meat, and that structured water is where a lot of the nutrients are. So you notice the meat, it's like, I'm sure you've eaten frozen meat. People have eaten frozen meat, like when you cook it, it's always a little bit more dry. It's hard to like cook it right. It's different than fresh. So, and I've eaten frozen meat before, and honestly, I notice a difference. It is more dry. It's a little more tough. So definitely, fresh meat is always the best. The frozen meat's not gonna, be the best. But for fish, some fish, I think it's okay. If that's all you can do, because you might need it. You might need some fish. You might not be able to eat the red meat sometimes. So
Yeah, have you made any discoveries that, you can't find Aajonus talking about? Because you've been on the diet for 6 years, and so obviously you're going to learn things, and you might have learned things that, you can't find on the internet really. So does that, spark any thoughts?
um, aside from adding more ingredients to the baths, which is really just kind of common sense, The waters didn't stop being polluted, when Aajonus died. So they're just more polluted now. So you need to add more things or more of those things. I can't really say off the top of my head. No. Um,
He was that good.
it was, yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, maybe there's a couple things the way I do things, but it's just kind of hard to think about because I don't really think about them as like, oh, I made this discovery and oh yeah, I'm so great. It's just kind of like it's just how I do things.
I see
And
what
when
you
you do
mean.
things when it's in your routine, they kind of get like lost. It's like, yeah, I brushed my teeth this morning. So what? I don't really remember if I did anything special about it. Um, well, the Sonicare toothbrush I mentioned, I recommend. That's very helpful. Aajonus also recommends a water pick, which I haven't really invested in yet. But to clean the gums, I hear that's it can be helpful. So it's yeah, I mean once you go through the books and the Q&As and the workshops are also very helpful. I find a lot of gems. Most of the gems I find now are in the workshops because he's giving actual consultations to people. He's looking at them. He's saying, okay, you need to do this, eat this, do this, and you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And it's helpful because he's telling people what's wrong with them and what to do about it. So, like, if you have similar problems, you can be like, oh, that's me. Maybe I should try that. That's where I got the that berry detox formula, the milkshake with the lime, the lemon, the coconut cream, the vinegar, the berries. Sometimes I just do the milkshake with berries. But recently, I've been adding in the other stuff, and that kind of helps too. I think it's a little more gives it a little more oomph. So
Where do you watch the workshops? Do you pay for them, or is there a website, or do you find them on YouTube?
yeah, it's the primaldiet.net. I'm sure they're, everything's on free online somewhere. So I'm sure if you look hard enough, you can find them. But it's always good to support the site because that's a lot of people say Aajonus is dead, but he set up his trust, his living trust, to hold that, and he put people responsible for it. So I feel like it's honoring Aajonus's wishes. If he was alive today, he wouldn't let any of his stuff get out there for free on the internet. He would be on it. So I think just because people aren't on it doesn't mean it's a great thing. I mean, of course, the information is very useful. It's helped a lot of people, but I think it's like I said, I just think it's important to support the website because it's like honoring Aajonus's wishes and supporting Aajonus in a way. Some people complain because they have not transcribed the remaining Q&As and such, but really I can see why they haven't done it because it's like if people just put it out there for free, why should they invest time and money into transcribing something? So I feel like it's kind of a give and take, but I think there's a benefit to listening because you absorb the information in a different way when you can just look something up. It's kind of like you might like forget it or you might miss other things. So for me, I like listening to it. That's what I do in the tub is I'll put on, a workshop or something and just listen to that for 2 hours. So
Yeah, so I have a question about, ideally, where would you like to live in the world? Where do you think is the best place to move? And how would you like to live?
so this is something I've kind of thought about, but not like too much. I don't really know if I'll stick around here in the Midwest. Obviously, there's a lot of advantages for that. It can be easy to find foods. It's not too expensive. If you like seasons, you got the seasons. Obviously, moving somewhere more tropical or warm is going to make you heal faster. Excuse me. Especially if you have access to hot springs, which they're in Arkansas, but that's really more the South than the Midwest. But we don't really have any hot springs here in the Midwest. So I don't know. I've thought about vacationing to El Salvador when I'm able, if I'm able. Who knows what's going to happen in the future, with just all the madness in the world. but they have good hot springs there, and I think pretty decent food. Thailand's another option, in Asia, because that's where Aajonus would go. Of course, he had his farms and stuff there, but or his retreat center. But it's really easy to get quality raw foods there, and it's cheap. It's warmer. There's not hot springs, but it is warmer. You're gonna sweat a lot, so that's good. Might be kind of hard to find milk, but I'm sure there's dairies there. And in Asia, they don't really have the laws like we do here. You could get raw milk from somewhere. Like it probably wouldn't be too big of a deal. um, so yeah, and then some people say Europe is good. Um, I think some things are probably good there. It can be maybe difficult. I don't know where you are,
I'm in
but
Sweden.
okay, okay. Um, yeah, I hear Sweden is a little tricky sometimes, depending on
It
where you
is
live.
definitely
Yeah,
hard to find stuff.
so but yeah, I've heard like Germany is good and Austria, probably France is probably pretty good. Um,
The countryside in general,
yeah,
and in any country, if you live near a bunch of farms, you'll always be able to talk to them. So
yeah, absolutely.
that's what I would say. So in Europe, it's not so much about the country more specifically. You can, look at other factors when you're choosing a
Hmm.
country. But when it comes to sourcing food and when it comes to health in general, I think moving away from the cities in any of these European countries is going to be your best bet. Because in Georgia, as an example, so not the state, but the country in Europe,
Right.
um, the countryside has a bunch of stuff. But if you're in the city, it's going to be harder. And Georgia is known to be a country that is fairly good for all primal dieters, from what I've heard. But Eat Raw Meat,
Interesting.
my friend, where can one find you on social media?
Well, I'm on YouTube. Eat Raw Meat. Primal Diet Advice is my kind of main channel now. I'm on TikTok at Eat Raw Meat, and I just started an Instagram account. It's at Real Eat Raw Meat because somebody already took Eat Raw Meat. But that's everything. So
Okay, and I advise anyone who's watching to go and follow Eat Raw Meat, because your content, I mean, when I went into the YouTube channel at least, you have some stuff that only an experienced raw primal dieter, health practitioner would know. So, and these tips really help a lot. As an example, um, I know now that I need to avoid Pellegrino. As an example, I was drinking it before, but
yeah,
to a certain degree, I was trying to remove the bubbles, but not completely. But anyway,
sure.
uh,
And just about the Pellegrino thing, I talked to some people in Europe, I know, and their label still says naturally sparkling. So I'm not sure if that's just something they send to the US, because it might be branded different. So I'm not sure if they're just artificially carbonating the US water or if the Pellegrino water in Europe is still good. Um, if someone's interested, they should probably send an email. But yeah, if you shake out the carbonation, I mean that's the next best thing. But it's just funny like that, it's like food when you talk about food sourcing, how different things can be. Even though it's a same company, it's different things. So
yeah. Well, we'll definitely do an interview in the future, probably, because it's really nice talking to you, and I know that you have a bunch of things to say, and we can't go on forever. We can't make it a 6-hour interview. So thank you for agreeing to do the interview, my friend.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Thanks for your time. It's good speaking with you.